And we are live. Welcome, welcome. Where's our tunes? There they are. There's our
There's the
tunes.
tunes.
We got to have some music this morning. It is October 1st. It is our weekly check-in. It is the Coaches Podcast with Coach Sofet once again.
Thank you for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining me. It's week 5 check-in. We are mid-season at this point.
Yes, we are.
Super grateful to have you. We can blend this down a little bit. We've got a lot to get into. We've got 7 questions. I'm excited to hear what happened. So let's get right into it. You guys were on the road last Friday in Sabinal, Texas, about an hour west. And I just want to hear overall, for those of us that weren't able to attend, what was your general take? What happened? Give us the rundown. What went down in Sabinal?
We ended up losing 58-14 or 58-12. It was one of those 2 scores. They kind of got us from the start. The first play of the game, they threw like a 70 or 60-yard touchdown pass on us. We fumbled the kickoff. The ensuing kickoff, we got the ball back. And sometimes those things kind of snowball.
Definitely.
And this is one of those games where, I think that kind of happened. I think it snowballed and snowballed quick. You can kind of relate it a little bit to the New Braunfels Christian game a little bit. You have those games where those things happen. We kind of got a little healthier last week too, and we got some more guys back, and you kind of have a different mindset going in there, and it just didn't work out the way that we kind of planned. And that's kind of life and kind of sports. Sometimes you have this whole game plan and it just doesn't work out. Same with life. This is my plan and it just doesn't work out that way. And so it's a good kind of life lesson, kind of what happened on Friday night for all of us. And, we kind of take away what we take away from it and kind of move on to the next week.
Exactly. And you guys did have a couple of really big passing touchdowns. I talked to Caden a little bit about it. And what's interesting is they were alluding, some of the players that I spoke with, about the offensive line. I think you guys had a couple of 90-yard touchdowns, arguably something like that.
They were far. I don't know the exact. They were probably about 70 or 80 yards,
which is encouraging.
It is.
Those are big plays.
They are. We had a couple we could have hit too, a couple other ones. You never know. That's what everybody says. Well, if this happened, this would have happened. You got to play it as the game actually plays out. What actually did happen? We did respond. It took us a couple possessions to really get going, and then we were able to get the long touchdown. Those are always nice. And then we were able to get another touchdown. Late. A couple long touchdowns are nice to add, but we still got to work on the stuff to get the ball underneath. The big plays are nice, but chunking the ball down the field little by little, taking 6 here, taking 7, kind of giving what the defense gives you. Stuff that we're going to kind of put a point of emphasis on this week. The big plays are nice, everybody likes them, it gets everybody into the game, but sometimes the takes 5 here, takes 6 here, okay, now we got 20 yards here, and just getting chunk plays, or maybe even a 1-yard run just to get the offensive line moving and those kind of things, just to be consistent with that. So, and
speaking of the offensive line, how do you feel like they were able to contribute in getting Caden the time to get those big plays down the field? What's your take on how is your offensive line doing? They're kind of the unsung heroes. It's easy to forget about that. How would you kind of say that they're performing at this point in the season?
They played well. There's a couple breakdowns in protection on a couple plays. And the guys owned it, before I could even say anything in the film room. They kind of really owned, like, hey, coach, this is the play where I missed my block. And then without us really saying much, a couple of them are there teaching each other, like, hey, man, when he's doing that, and standing up in the film room, like, hey, this is how you do this. And that's how you get better. Without those big plays don't happen in 2 seconds. Those big plays take about 4 to 5 seconds. So they gave him the time. Caden was able to read his receivers and get the ball down the field. And, like I said, they aren't the ones scoring the touchdown, so they are really unsung heroes, but they just continue to work. Continuity is big with them, and they're the same 5 from last year. There's only one plug in from last year that wasn't the same. They were a little banged up throughout the game. We had to make a couple of substitutions and late in the game. But overall, they've been consistent for us, and they just, you got to win the trenches. So,
yes.
And we're not doing that on the defensive side, and we know that. But like I said, in the film room and different things, those are some things that, we've definitely worked on and talked about. And, you see little things here and there that eventually turn into the big things. And the guys got to stay confident. I told them I'm going to keep doing the podcast. I said the record's not going to decide what we do. We're still going to do the PowerPoint. We're still going to do the film. We're still going to do our study hall. We're not going to change, our overall week. We're going to still go through the same. Now, some of the stuff we do on the field, like in the preparation part there might be a little different, but the other parts of it, we're going to consistently do what we do because that's who we are. I mean, we're, obviously we've changed a couple of things, but we're going to stay to what we are, and we got to build our foundation. I was watching a podcast with the Texas Tech coach, and he was at a high school, and he walked into this high school, and he talked about, he was walking in, his coach had 700-800 wins, and he had this big trophy case, and he was like, man, I can't wait to start putting trophies in this trophy case. And the coach looked down and was like, we got to build the trophy case first. So you got to build the foundation of what we do here, and that's what we're working on. I know sometimes the results don't show it, but the kids keep showing up every day. I mean, guys aren't turning their equipment in. Guys aren't like, this is ridiculous. We're not having that kind of attitude. They're coming in, they're like, coach, we're ready to go. They're excited for another opportunity this week. Hey coach, what time's the bus leaving on Saturday? Hey coach, what's the plan the rest of the week? Right. Like they're ready to go. So, it shows that they're still committed, and that's kind of the pillar I've been now I'm moving on to was really using accountability last month and this month, really talking to all the kids and athletes about commitment, because this is when it gets rough. The 1 in 4 stuff can get rough on the commitment part. From, are we watching film? Are we still staying and prepping the way we're supposed to? And you got to understand, like, sometimes you only get one opportunity at this thing. So put your heart into it.
Yeah. And you mentioned very importantly, you kind of alluded to the next question, preparation. What are you doing? I know that we've talked about you're making adjustments weekly and trying and experimenting with different things. You've had a slew of road games. Is there anything that you were working on last week that you're going to change up for this week as far as pregame preparation?
We're going to bring a speaker and play music in the locker room. That's
okay.
Okay.
Good.
That's the one thing they had actually talked about, and we forgot it. I mean, I'd rather us have the water than the speaker, just to make sure. We kind of ran into an issue the first game, but we've figured it out, especially just communicating with the coach in the school and making sure we have everything. But, they talked about a speaker, kind of really playing some music in the locker room, and it's having some time to really, that's what they do here. Sure. So, kind of having the same kind of mimicking what we do at home and on the road. I kind of talked to them too about a couple other things this week in preparation. And, I showed them a couple of clips. One of them was the Oregon Ducks last year. They're going to play Wisconsin, and Wisconsin before the start of the fourth quarter plays the jump around song. Okay. And so all week, the Oregon Ducks coach just would randomly play it.
Okay.
Like their mindset was like, okay, this won't be a total shock when we walk in Wisconsin, they start playing the jump around song. So my mindset wise, okay, we've heard it all week. Like, what's the difference? So he was in the meeting, and then he walked out of the meeting, he played the song and walked out. And then he would do it, and he's like, all right, fourth quarter, boom, he'd randomly play it in the middle of practice, and he'd do it. And I was like, okay, I like that. And then I showed him the clip of Michigan and Penn State from about 4 or 5 years ago. And Michigan ran onto the field, and they took a delay game to start the game. They were just so overwhelmed by the noise and the Mo Bamba song that was going on. And I said, what team are we? What team are we going to be? What team, here's a realization of what we look like. I said, we've been playing like Michigan, where the first couple plays of the game have took us out of the game completely. We need to turn into what Oregon's doing. We need to continue. So that's going to kind of be our songs of the week. We're going to play at practice, so they mentally can kind of be ready to go. And it's not really, those songs aren't going to get played there, but it's just a mentality thing for them to kind of, use that to be like, okay, we're ready for this moment and different things. And that's kind of one of the things I'm kind of changing for this week. We got to try to figure out how to win on the road. And that's the fun times about sports and coaching, like figuring things out.
Sure.
It's a cool thing when you do solve it.
Right.
I asked the kids too, like yesterday, I was like, hey man, anybody have anything they want to say? Get it off your chest. So this is us. And a couple of guys stood up, said some things, and I was like, well, I think that's how you grow. I told them I have to be held accountable as much as they do, but we all have to be able to sit in here and watch the film and be able to take critiques, because it's not really critiquing them and calling them out. It's more of a coaching moment, and you got to be coachable.
Sure. And speaking of coachable, I know we've talked about defense, and it seems like of the losses that we've had this year, these are 50-point scoring games for the offense, the opposing offense. We've talked about tackling. We've talked about a point of emphasis on defense. How do you feel like at this point that it pertains to maybe a mental or a mindset issue with your defense? Or to rephrase the question, what are you guys working on defensively to get that point differential down?
Yeah, we have this new kind of mantra we're taking on. We didn't really set goals for the defense. It was more get the ball, get a stop, and get the ball back to the offense, and kind of set a thing. We call it knockouts, and you have to get, field goal attempts or 3 and out or a takeaway or a turnover on down. So those are like 4 areas where if we get one of those and we get 5 of them in a game, we'll probably win. We only got 2. And so something they kind of gave them a goal. I've made this little poster. It's not the greatest poster because I was designing it, but I do the best I can to kind of show them like something. And, I gave it to them on the bus for them to think about it. And so we're going to still continue that goal on the defense this week. We're still going to do tackling this stuff. Like I said, I think the film's important too, because this week, I think more than most weeks, it was more obvious of what we weren't doing and able to really teach them. And there was times, like I said, I think accountability and them stepping up in the film room was important yesterday, because I was like, man, I don't know who this is. That's me, coach. Like guys would just automatically just say that was me.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, okay. And instead of, really us calling them out, it was more of a teachable moment on my part, like, hey, let's teach this. And then the kids would own up to it. And I think that's the first part of it. They if they own it, like, hey, I'm not doing this, and next week they'll show up. And, I'm confident in the group that we have that we're going to continue to show up, and we're going to get better, and we're going to be ready to go this week. I know we scrimmaged against the Haney's and different things like that. So we've seen them before and we've watched film, and I tell them, I'm like, just because what their record is, or we've played common opponents and their games are closer, I said that doesn't mean anything. It's when we kick off on Saturday night at 7:00, who's ready to go. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah. And it sounds like 2 more questions here. It sounds like Sabinal jumped out to an early lead, and you guys were playing essentially, is it correct, from behind the entire game. Who would you like to shout out to? Maybe it's the whole team. I don't know. I just wanted to give you an opportunity. Who was some players that just didn't quit, that essentially were playing from behind and just gave you, as you say, emptied the tank, just gave you everything they got? Anybody come to mind that just did not quit?
Probably 2 right off the top of my head when you asked that question. Isaac Vargas and Logan Grigsby. Those 2 right there just continued to play the whole game. The other guys played the whole game, but I think they stuck out. There were just plays when we're like, look at hustling, what it looks like. I think another one also is one of our freshmen, Lucas. There was times on film, he's just running as fast as he can down there, and that's what it's about. Just giving your full effort,
right?
At halftime, that's what I talked about. I said, it's going to come down to effort and heart. And I said, I know this speech has been made probably too many times where we got to start worrying about next week, but I want to see how y'all finish the game, like win the second half. And we were able to win the second half 7-0 or 6-0 or whatever it was. So, those are things you take away as a positive. And, we're building this thing. It's only year 2, but, we do have goals and aspirations of winning at the same time. And so we're just going to continue to work and continue to do, the best we can and prep the boys the best we can. And, I've had a lot more probably one-on-one talks with them on the side. Hey man, what do you think? I want the honest opinion. Like, what do you think it is? And it's been a common theme. I'll keep it between us of what is being said, but it's been a common theme amongst them. And we kind of talked about some of it yesterday, and that's kind of how you get better. You got to communicate. And I think us communicating from me to the players and the players as a whole is important, because you're not going to get anywhere if you hold stuff in. You got to be able to communicate.
Sure. I love that. And lastly, moving on to this week's game. You said it's Saturday night. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So no more Friday night lights. It's Saturday night lights this week.
I told them, y'all want to play college football? Here you go, man.
Here we go.
Saturday football.
Yeah. And it sounds like you're in Dehanus, right?
Yes, sir.
And that was also one of the first scrimmages. That was the second scrimmage that you guys had here as well, was Dehanus. So you faced this team already this year. What are you thinking is your outlook? What do the players need to do? This is a little message to them. It's obviously Wednesday here, October 1st. What do they need to do for the remainder of the week to stay locked in and get this victory on Saturday night?
We just got to prepare, and the same way we've been preparing, but then we have to bring it on game day. That's probably the best thing. And that's what I told them. I thought that now still say it. I thought last week was our best week of practice. Going into a game, I thought last week was our best week of practice.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of was shocked that happened. That happens sometimes. You prep for a test, you study all week, and then you get the test and you get a 50, and it happens, and it's life. And it's tough for kids to understand that, because I'm sitting there like, man, this is not the same team. And sometimes that just happens. And instead of sitting there and, getting upset and stuff, it's coachable and teachable moments, and you use them. And then you just, like I said, for this week, we got to keep prepping. I have a couple, ideas for doing some things, maybe offensively. Our pregame routine might change that up a little bit. So I've had a little ideas on a couple things I want to tweak going into the week, and maybe they'll help us on game day. But we just got to keep working. This part of it, 1 and 4 is real easy to kind of shrug your shoulders and not show up and work, but we're going to show up and work. You got to bring your hard hat. You got to be ready to go. This is, like I tell the seniors, I show them a picture in the slideshow of last year when we all stood on the field together as seniors, with all the stands, the cheerleaders, the band, and we made like a big old circle together. And then we broke it down as a group. I said, we're getting close to that moment. So we have to kind of figure things out like that. I said, I showed it on August the 3rd, but now it's October, October. It's getting close to November the 6th. And so, how do you want to be remembered in the legacy on stuff? So, like I said, I've been trying to put some things that, they can relate to. I told them about the Texas Tech coach thing. I showed them Oregon and Michigan. They understand that stuff because they watch college football. So, I even told them some things about the Eagles, and they always kind of roll their eyes, but I'm like, at the same time, they're doing things right that can help. And are like, I tell them, like, look at this tackle. They literally, the broadcast is telling them, look at how he's tackling.
Right.
And so just any little bit to where it clicks in their head. And sometimes you have to use examples of people are visual learners sometimes to be able, like, I could talk, but sometimes they see it, and then they see it at that level. They're like, okay, that makes sense. Okay, I see what he's talking about. So that's what it is, just trying to relate to those kind of things. And we're just continue to work, behind the scenes with the coaches. It's not like oh man, what are we going to do? It's like, nope, this is the routine of the week. This is what we're going to do. And we're going to kind of get back to work and just be ready to go on Saturday night.
There you go, Coach. Wishing you all the best. Super excited for you. D'Hanis, Saturday night, Bears football. We're going to get a win. I'm feeling it.
We're gonna put our hearts into it and get one as well. I feel it too. The kids put in a lot of work, and they deserve to come home with a win. So
there you go. Appreciate you for being here.
Absolutely.
Wishing you the best. And we also have October 10th. Is that right? This is homecoming. The next home game here at Bears Stadium, where we're sitting in the skybox right now. I'm super excited to see you guys play, and we'll roll the music and conclude for this week.
Yep. I tell them, don't worry about next week. That's a distraction at the moment.
Right. But just announcing for everybody else, super excited for you guys to come and play back home. Wishing you all the best to get this win at D'Hanis. Thank you so much for joining me, Coach. I love our time together. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And we'll see you again next week.
Yep. Go Bears.
Go Bears. Thank you, guys.